Hello, 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 hello. Hi, hello, 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 hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to you all. If you're watching us live or you're watching us on playback, I am so happy to be here with you all. I'm so excited to be sharing in this energy that we have today. Our final session of the winter and spring edition of Inhale XL, presented by Cross Boundaries. My name is Rodney DeVerlis, and I'm so happy to welcome you all here today. Before I begin, I just want to take a moment to recognize that right now I'm sitting in my living room, a little makeshift setup. And my living room is underneath that is Queen Street, what's known now as Queen Street, but generally that these lands are traditional territories in the meeting place of the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat peoples. This site in many ways has been a place for human meetings and activities for over a millennia. And I always find it really interesting that, in many ways, this place was bound by this covenant, this dish with one spoon, wampum treaty, that recognized, back then that folks were from various different nations, different tribes, and came together to share in the bounty of this land, to share in the meal, one dish with one spoon. And I think now, centuries later, myself as a descendant of displanted Africans who were forcibly brought to the Americas, and to think about centuries later how much we still are a meeting place of people of various nations, and we're all still here sharing this one dish with many, many, many different spoons. And want to just share my gratitude and so grateful for the original caretakers of the land in many ways for allowing us to be here. And I'm thankful for my ancestors for the labor and the work that was given to that was forced upon to labor on this land. And I'm thankful for you all as well for your all of our collective continued commitments to honoring, to protecting, and to sustaining this land. This has been a beautifully long season of Inhale XL. We've had such a fantastic array of events and programming, and this today is no exception. I'm so excited for today's session. Our existence is our resistance. And it's a broad conversation with leZlie Cam around supporting QT BIPOC seniors and our elder folks. leZlie Cam, she, her, is a world majority Brown, Trini, Carib, Indo, Chinese, Kalalu, differently abled, queer, dyke elder. She lives her life and work from an anti-oppression, anti-racism, anti-colonialism perspective. leZlie is a facilitator, advocate, and community connector and storyteller. She enjoys doubles, dancing, dim sum, a cold beverage, and a hot lime anytime. Yes, aren't we missing the lines? Please help me welcome leZlie Cam.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you to Across Boundaries.
Oh, thank you for being here. We're so excited to be hosting you, and I'm excited that you were able to accept our invitation and come out to close out our season for us. And I've spoken enough. I just want to pass it on to you, love. Please help me welcome leZlie Cam.
Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. You're probably wondering, why am I wearing this crown? Well, because I am the queen of queer seniors in Canada. And as I was saying to Rodney earlier, sometimes when we talk about these topics, it tends to be a bit heavy. So I like to add a little bit of fun to the work that I do. So this crown was given to me by Taylor Mack, who is an international drag queen based in New York. So I wear it proudly. And also I want to introduce you to my mobility device. As you heard from Rodney, I'm differently abled, and this is Robin, one of my mobility devices. I have 4 of them. And it's important for you to meet me and my mobility device, because many times those of us who are disabled and differently abled are invisible, and people only see our mobility devices and they don't see us. So that's why it's important for me to introduce my mobility device. So I have a PowerPoint to go through with you this evening. And also Rodney is going to be taking care of the chat. So if you have any questions or comments as I move through my presentation, feel free to enter them in the chat, and there'll be a Q&A at the end of my presentation. So next slide, please. So this is me lip syncing to Helen Reddy's song, I Am Woman. It's, if you want to take a look at the whole thing, you can go to YouTube, leZlie Maria Lee Cam, and you'll see the entire song. Next slide, please. So I named the workshop, Our Existence is Our Resistance, because we who are 2S LGBTQI seniors have been here for a long time. And not only are we resilient, we are resistant. So that's why I named the workshop Our Existence is Our Resistance. And we are not unicorns. Unicorns are mythical creatures who don't really exist, but people seem to think that queer seniors are unicorns. We actually exist. Next slide, please. I thank Rodney for the amazing land acknowledgement. This is a land acknowledgement that I usually do myself, because I've been living on Indigenous lands here in Takaronto for the past 51 years, and we are covered here by Treaty 13. And my call to action is that we must work together and use our power and privilege to help Indigenous people regain their rights and privileges, many of which we settlers take for granted. I am from Trinidad, you can tell by my lovely accent. And it's really important that we put money into systems that benefit and support Indigenous people. Next slide, please. So this is just telling you a bit about who I am. You can check me out on my website, leslieoutofthecloset.com. Next slide, please. And Rodney has already told you my many identities. So I am an intersectional human being. We are all intersectional human beings. I've been a DIE community activist for the past 45 years, and I advocate for two-spirited Indigenous people, queer seniors, and youth of color. I also work with the Youth Elders Project under the auspices of Buddies in Bad Times Theatre. And it's an intergenerational queer project, and it's the first one of its kind in Canada. And it's really important to be working from an intergenerational and intersectional perspective when we do this work, because I always say, if we are lucky, those of you who are young and queer right now, if you are lucky, one day too, you will be a queer senior. And it's really important to work from an intergenerational perspective so queer youth can learn more about the lives of us queer seniors and how to support us as we are aging. And queer seniors, for us, it's important to support queer youth because we share a lot in common in terms of housing. Our housing is precarious. Our job situation is precarious. Our relationships, how our families treat us. I also work with the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility. And what's interesting about that organization, the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility, is they have not acknowledged the existence of 2S LGBTQI seniors. I work also with the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and we have just developed guidelines for service providers who are working with 2S LGBTQI people. And it's the first time this has happened in Canada. And I also am now on the board of Pride Toronto. I'm the first queer senior to be on the board of Pride Toronto in the history, the 40-year history of Pride. And I have been appointed to the 2S LGBTQ Community Advisory Board for the City of Toronto. So it's really important that queer seniors have a presence in places where policies are made which affect our lives. Next slide, please. So as I said, I live from an intersectional and intergenerational perspective and an anti-oppression, anti-racist, and anti-colonial perspective. The rest you have heard in my bio. Next slide, please. So this is just when we are having our Q&A to be kind, respectful, and considerate. Listen and participate. When we're doing the Q&A, just asking one person to speak at a time, and to use only I statements, and please try not to make generalities. And anything that's said here tonight, to please keep it confidential. And while this is happening, if you can mute yourselves. Next slide, please. So the objective of the workshop, we will be dealing with the unique challenges and barriers which generally affect 2S LGBTQI seniors, and specifically the impact of the COVID pandemic on our daily lives. All of our lives shifted on March the 13th, 2020. And the impact on queer seniors is very different from straight seniors. And moving forward, I'm going to use the word queer instead of using the whole acronym. And I'm using the word queer with the deepest respect, because for many of us, queer has been a bad word. It's been derogatory. It's been used against us like a weapon. The word queer has been reclaimed by the younger generation. And I also identify as being a queer dyke. But when we're doing this work with people who are older, who are LGBTQI, and who are two-spirit, please be mindful of how you use the word queer. Next slide. So why are we here tonight? I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to be here tonight, to learn more about how you can work with us, how you can support us, how we can create awareness and safer and more respectful and accepting spaces for queer seniors. And just to let you know that 10% of the whole population is queer. And 1 in 16 seniors in North America is now identifying as queer. And we'll also talk about how ageism and ableism are affecting queer seniors. At the beginning, I introduced my cane, my mobility device. And when you're older, you lose value and respect from society in general. And when you start using a mobility device, it's even more difficult. And when you're queer, when you add all these different layers of oppression, it's even harder when you're a queer senior. When you hear different people talking about seniors and seniors who are dying in long-term care homes, it's very, very tragic. What you're not hearing about is queer seniors who are dying in long-term care homes and how ageism and ableism are affecting us. Next slide, please. So this is just for people who don't know the basics. 2S LGBTQI plus. So 2S is for Two Spirit, which covers people who are indigenous and who identify as queer or trans. They use the term Two Spirit. And then we have L for lesbian, G for gay, B for bisexual, T for transgender, Q for queer or questioning, I for intersex, and then the plus. We have many other letters that come under the umbrella, but these are the basic ones that we use. Next slide, please. So this is Jendi, our little friend who illustrates the four components of our human identity. So sex, so assigned sex at birth. So sex is between the legs. I'm just being as simple as possible with this illustration. So when the baby is born, the doctor looks at the genitalia and says male or female, or if the doctor can't tell, the sex is intersex. So what's happening too with people who are intersex, they're not given a lot of choice at birth because doctors are still performing invasive surgeries to make the child either male or female without any choice. So assigned sex. The next one is gender. So what is gender? Gender is how we feel in our hearts, in our souls, and in our minds. I know many of you hear about gender reveal parties. Well, a baby doesn't know its gender. You don't know your gender until you start growing into who you are as a human being. So those are not really gender reveal parties. Those are sex reveal parties. And we talk about gender expression. So gender expression is what we wear on the outside. So if you're taking a look at my lovely jacket, my gender expression, the term that was used previously is androgynous. And I like to wear pajamas as day wear. So I'm loving wearing this lovely pajama top that I picked up from a thrift store. And we talk about our attraction. So who we are attracted to romantically or sexually. So that's basically our sexual orientation. Next slide. So under the Ontario Human Rights Code, there are 4 grounds under which queer folks are covered. But I want you to remember that all people living in Ontario are covered under the Human Rights Code. Many times when I do a workshop, I'll have somebody say, oh, well, you people meaning us queer people, are covered under the Human Rights Code, but I am not. And you people want special rights. We don't want special rights. We want human rights. And under the Human Rights Code, specifically, we are covered under assigned sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. Next slide, please. So this is just basically an overview. So I just wanted to let you know that many of us queer seniors are invisible because we are hiding. We are going back into the closet, even more so now during COVID. And we are even isolated in our general communities. So there are many, many resources and services available to seniors in general. Now, the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility does not even acknowledge the existence of queer seniors. And I sit on their liaison committee, and I'm the only queer senior sitting on a committee that represents 50 to 60 seniors groups in Ontario. That's to tell you how invisible we are. And if I do not speak up at that table, our issues are not heard. And I keep challenging the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility to acknowledge the fact that we exist. So we are going back into the closet. We are hiding. We are afraid. We are afraid to be out because we could lose our families. When I came out in 1976, I had already moved out from my mother's home and I was living on my own. My mother disowned me. She said that I was bringing disgrace and dishonor to the family. Plus, I'm the only girl child. So, girl children in families of color are not supposed to leave the home unless they're getting married. So, I left my mother's home without getting married, and I had girlfriends. I said to her, I'm not an axe murderer. I have a job. I'm kind. I'm caring. But because my mother is Catholic and the Pope says all homosexuals should burn in hell. And the Pope hasn't changed his view very much since then. So we're afraid of losing our friends, we're afraid of losing our jobs and our community support. And now with the lockdown of COVID, we have even less community support. And now that we are locked down until the middle of May, it's even more difficult for us to have any contact. Straight seniors have all kinds of resources available to them. We queer seniors do not have those luxuries. We face poverty, poor health care. You have to decide whether to be out and be discriminated against in terms of homophobia or transphobia or lesbophobia, or you hide who you are in terms of your sexual orientation and your true gender identity in order to receive good health care. And that should never happen. You should never have to hide who you are because it affects your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and your physical well-being. And we have multiple identities. We all have multiple identities, not just queer folks. And there's a huge impact in terms of aging and dementia for transgender people. There's not a lot of research that's been done, but what we are finding in terms of anecdotal stories is that transgender people are experiencing dementia at an earlier age than straight people, and people who are HIV positive are also experiencing dementia at an earlier age. And the stigma that's attached when you're HIV positive or if you're a transgender person, and if you're living in a long-term care home, it's even more difficult in terms of the aging process. And it's also important, as I said earlier, for us to bridge that generation gap because we are asking, queer seniors are asking younger queer people to support us. But for me, it is also our responsibility as queer seniors to support younger queer people. Because if we don't bridge that generation gap, we will not live full, enjoyable lives. Next slide, please. So this is really important, this slide, because the COVID pandemic has had a huge impact on the lives of 2S LGBTQ seniors. It's had a huge impact on queer people in general, but more so on queer seniors. So when I tell people what's going on in long-term care homes, they're horrified. So on what happened on March the 13th, 2020, was that all volunteers were prevented from going into long-term care homes, retirement homes, nursing homes, and rehab hospitals. I was volunteering at Bridgepoint Active Healthcare 2 days a week. And I got a phone call on March the 13th saying, please don't come in for your safety and for the safety of our residents. All programming was taken away in those places. So there was no bingo, no music, no manicures, no storytelling, no movies. Any little form of enjoyment was taken away. The other thing that people don't realize is that seniors in long-term care homes and all of those other institutions, because they are institutions, were no longer allowed to have meals in the dining rooms. They have been confined to their rooms since March the 13th, 2020. So for all intents and purposes, seniors, including queer seniors, have become prisoners in these institutions. And they are no longer allowed to be in the common areas of these homes. So the TV area or the room where you would sit and play games or the cafeteria where you could go and have a meal, everything has been shut down. So queer seniors who were already in hiding because for fear of being discriminated against and even for fear of physical assault, because it's difficult to be out and to be your true self in some of these long-term care homes or retirement homes, because the staff are not trained to work with us. So just picture a queer senior who's now in their room and has been in that room for more than a year now. And some of the other factors that are impacting us, it's a greater impact on our health and our mental health, our physical health and our mental health. We are 10% more likely to experience social isolation. I would say that percentage is even higher. There are stronger views in terms of social distancing when it comes to long-term care homes. We are experiencing even more employment insecurities, and we are less confident about financial recovery in the future. When the government was giving money out to all the different sectors of the population, queer seniors were the last on the list to receive any money. And if you were a queer senior and you had a disability, you were the last to receive money. And I am a queer senior with a disability, and I did not receive any money until July, and it was a one-time payment of $600, whereas other segments of the population could have applied for the different pockets of money that were being handed out on a monthly basis. We didn't have that luxury. Many of us have lost our social connections because of the setup in long-term care homes. And trying to keep in touch has become even more difficult because many of us don't have devices. And if we do have a device, we have to be careful how we use that device in our long-term care home or the retirement home, because for fear of experiencing again homophobia or transphobia. Next slide, please. So this is another huge piece that people are not aware of, is the impact of visitation in long-term care homes. So as I said earlier, there's more isolation and loneliness. What's happened is that in order for you to go and visit somebody in a long-term care home, you have to be deemed an essential caregiver. And chosen families are not being recognized by the Ministry of Long-Term Care or the Ministry of Health as essential caregivers. So just imagine you're queer, you're older, you don't have any family, your only family are your chosen family, and your chosen family are not allowed to come and see you. It is beyond horrendous what is happening. The long-term care homes continue to lack acknowledgement. The chosen family is a real family. And that's something we are fighting right now. I am on the Toronto Senior Pride Network, and we made a submission to the Long-Term Care Commission. And when we made the submission, we were told, well, you're a special interest group. And we said, no, we are human beings who happen to be queer. We are seniors who are queer. So still, it's a constant fight with all the different government ministries and agencies for us to be recognized, us queer seniors to be recognized as human beings who need care and love and respect and understanding. And the visitation policies are very restricting and harmful to us queer seniors. We have to designate through a power of attorney who we want to have access to us. And those powers of attorney are not being recognized in long-term care homes. The city of Toronto runs 10 long-term care homes, and they are all mandated to be queer inclusive. There is a toolkit that was developed with Rainbow Health Ontario, Sherborne Health, the Toronto Senior Pride Network, and the 519. It's called Diversity, Our Strength. And that toolkit is supposed to be used as a training tool for all staff who are working in the city's 10 long-term care homes. It's not happening and nobody's holding them accountable. So you are living in a long-term care home. You think you have some measure of safety. You don't, because the staff is not trained. And now COVID happens. You have lost access to volunteers who might be queer. You have lost access to your chosen family. So we have become even more isolated, more afraid, more lonely. And when you hear the statistics of 4,000 seniors who have died in long-term care homes as a direct result of COVID, how many of those do you think are queer seniors? We will not know, but the percentage is very high because our existence is not being recognized. The other thing that the public is not aware of is that visitors to queer seniors are treated differently. We are only allowed 30 minutes to be with our queer loved ones, and our visits always must take place in a public part of the building. Whereas with straight seniors, they're allowed to have their loved ones come into their rooms to visit with them. And I want to impress upon you how hard that is, not having privacy, the privacy to hug each other, to hold each other, to kiss each other on the cheek, to even kiss each other on the lips, to hold hands. That's all been taken away, even more now during COVID. It's breaking my heart to even talk about this. We have become prisoners in our rooms, in long-term care homes, and in rehab hospitals. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to tell you briefly about Alf. This is Alf Roberts. You can look him up on YouTube. Alf Roberts and I became friends when we did a photo shoot for the 519 about 5 years ago. He came out at the age of 80. It's never too old to come out. He came out at the age of 80 at Fudger House, and Fudger House is on Sherborne, just south of Wellesley. It's one of the 10 city homes that's run by the city of Toronto. And Alf, when he came out at the age of 80, became an activist. He became head of the Residents Association at Fudger House, and he became head of the Queer Residents Association. And he started doing interviews. He has been in many documentaries. He's been in films. He's on posters. And I'm very proud and honored to have called him my friend. He was like my gay grandpa. And I used to go and visit him at Fudger House. He was an only child. His parents had died. He had no siblings. And many of us became friends with him. I knew that he liked chocolate, so I would take him chocolate. I sent him a card in the mail once a month because he said he loved receiving mail. We would watch The Young and Restless together. And then COVID hit, and we were cut off from Alf because we were not his blood family. It was horrible. It was tragic. It was sad. And then Alf died, and we were not told about Alf's death. And it broke our hearts. And then Alf was interred. He was cremated, and his ashes were interred. And we were not told about the interment. I found out through a friend of a friend that he was being interred. And 3 of us who found out went to his graveside where his ashes were interred. So Alf is sort of the poster boy for what happens to queer seniors, dying alone, afraid, and invisibly. And Alf didn't die because he got COVID. Alf died because of the impact of COVID on queer seniors in long-term care homes. So please remember that we exist, and we need your support, and we need your love and your understanding. Next slide, please. So transforming long-term care policies on kinship. It's a mouthful, but basically what it boils down to is, what can you do to get the government to change policies that regard residents who are queer in long-term care homes? Kinship, what does that mean? What does family mean? Family is more than biological family. It's chosen family. It's who we see in our lives that we want to be in our lives. We need to create spaces that acknowledge and respect chosen families. And family is fluid, it's dynamic. It consists of either biological or non-biological family members. And we must educate staff and residents on what it means to be queer, the diversity that goes with being queer. And the sexual expression comes along with different non-Western ways of thinking about what family means. And it really and truly boils down to cultural sensitivity and training to acknowledge especially the experiences of two-spirit elders. And two-spirit elders get lost in this whole morass of long-term care homes because their needs are so different, and they fall through the cracks. Next slide, please. So what can Across Boundaries do to support the mental and emotional well-being of queer seniors? I asked that specifically because I was asked to do this workshop for Across Boundaries. But you can take out Across Boundaries and say, what can I do? What can my organization do? What can we do to support queer seniors? So that's a question that I'm asking. And if at any point you have any comments or questions, please put them into the chat. Next slide, please. So offering support to us. I sit on the Sinai Health Pride Committee. And I have said to them, the first thing you need to do is to acknowledge that we exist. And I don't understand why people are so afraid to acknowledge that queer seniors exist. Everybody acknowledges that queer youth exists, and there are lots of services for queer youth out there. But when it comes to queer seniors, as I said, we're not unicorns. We're here. I don't know why people are afraid to realize that we are here. So learn what our experiences are and what our needs are. And let's build some trust with each other. And let's not be asking questions, especially my transgender friends get these questions all the time. Well, what do you have below your belt? What do you have below your waist? Why is that question important? The important question is, how can I support you as a transgender senior? What do you need from me? What can I do to make your life better? Offering support through education and learning opportunities. I had a long-term care home send me an email saying that one of their residents wanted to put up a calendar of firefighters. He wanted to put it up in his room, but the staff were horrified that this 75-year-old man wanted to have a calendar with half-naked men. And I said, well, what's the problem? They said, well, can you come in and do a training workshop around LGBTQ seniors? And I said, but one workshop is not enough. Remember that you cannot put up a flag, a rainbow flag, and think that is enough. You must do your work from the top down and the bottom up. Rakai Centers is a long-term care home. They have 2 locations, one at Sherborne and Wellesley and one at Carlton and Sherborne. They're the first long-term care home in Canada that is designated 25 beds for queer seniors. They have a waiting list of queer seniors. They have changed their infrastructure. I've been working with them for the past 5 years. And queer seniors know about Rakai now, and that is where they want to go because they know that they will feel safe. They know that they will be taken care of, and they can be their whole selves. And it's also important to make referrals that are queer affirming and queer inclusive and queer positive. Next slide, please. So moving forward, it is crucial, important, necessary to work from an intergenerational and intersectional perspective. We must support each other. One of the things that I produce is an event called Time After Time. I do it with Vanessa Dunn, who is my business partner, and it's an intergenerational social event for queer seniors. And it's usually held in the afternoon between 2 and 5 or 3 to 6. We've been doing this event since 2014. The last time we did it was at Rakai. It was an outdoor picnic. And we set up transportation to bring queer seniors who are in wheelchairs or who use scooters or who use canes or walkers. We have PSWs on hand. We have food that's geared towards everybody's needs. We try to make it as comfortable as possible. And it's really lovely to see queer youth with queer seniors at our events. And you learn from each other because queer seniors have so many stories to tell. And queer youth are saying, we need to know more about what happened before us. What were your struggles? What were your joys? What were your sorrows? So it's so important to work from that intergenerational and intersectional perspective. And moving forward, look at your internal systems. Where can you improve? Where can you make policy changes? And this is not just internal policy changes for your organization. How can you ask the government? How can you petition the government? How can you make changes within government structures? Because those policies impact our daily lives. And how can you raise awareness in your organization about what we need as queer seniors? I was a patient at Bridgepoint Active Healthcare in 2007, and I became a volunteer after I left there as a patient. And when I was a patient, I was treated badly by the staff. Now, this was 2007. I had homophobic and lesbophobic remarks made to me because I was out. I wasn't about to hide. But I have a big mouth and I like to make trouble. I'm a troublemaker respectfully. And when I started volunteering, one day I was on my way to the washroom and this woman grabbed me and assaulted me. And I went to Human Resources and I said, you have to do something about this because I am here as a volunteer and I am queer and I'm not safe. And when I was a patient here, I wasn't safe. So they said to me, what would you like us to do? So since when I was assaulted in 2015 at Bridgepoint and Sinai, Mount Sinai are amalgamated, and they started celebrating Pride. And I've said to them, celebrating Pride and raising the flag still isn't enough. You have to make internal infrastructure changes. So what can you do personally and organizationally and through your community connections to improve and save our lives being the lives of queer seniors? Next slide, please. So 7 steps to working with us. First of all, respect. Please remember, all we are asking for is respect. We're not asking you to accept us, but we are asking you to respect us. And we want equity. We want to be treated equally and equitably. We are asking you to stand up for us. When you hear homophobic and lesbophobic and transphobic remarks, please stand up and please speak up and acknowledge your privilege. We all have privilege, and how we use it is so important. Education, please educate yourselves, educate people around you. Find out why it's so difficult for queer seniors. Think about what we went through. When I came out in 1976, it was so unsafe and so difficult to be out and to be queer and to be a dyke back then. Things have gotten a lot better, but it's still not safe for transgender women. It's still not safe when you're a queer person of color. It's not safe when you're Black, and now you're adding not safe when you're Two-Spirit. It's not safe when you're gay and Asian. And please be caring. We're asking you to not only be caring, but to be kind, to be compassionate. And togetherness is so important. How we work together can make change happen. Next slide, please. So self-care. Self-care is probably one of the most important things you can do for yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of anybody else. And now during COVID, it's even more essential and more important. So my self-care, when I was able to go out dancing, I was out there. I am always the oldest person in the room when I go out dancing. with one of my canes. I love dim sum. I love doubles. If you do not know what doubles is, you have no idea what you're missing out on. Trini lime. Liming means hanging out. So getting together. And I'm single and ready to mingle. I like to put that out there because I want you to know, sexually, I'm still out there. You know, people think once you hit 50, you're no longer a sexual being. Well, I'm saying that's not true. The other thing I want you to keep in mind too is when you're taking care of yourself, it's not work. It's something you're doing for you to make you feel better. And when you feel better, you're able to help other people to feel better. Next slide, please. So mental wellness, resiliency, and building communities. I've included a list of affirming spaces and resources because whenever I do a presentation or a workshop, it's so important that there are resources available. One of the resources on this list is ODLAN, the Ontario Digital Literacy Access Network. It's the first queer access network in Canada. So I am on the board of ODLAN. So please look us up and find out more about us. Because of COVID and the isolation that we are facing, seniors in general, but more so queer seniors, we need to have that access, that digital access. And ODLAN is doing an amazing job. Steph Johnson, who is one of my friends, created ODLAN, and it's looking at making sure that seniors have access digitally. And there are a couple of other resources on the list that you will find helpful. Next slide, please. So these are some of the resources here in Toronto. The 519 CAYR is in New York region. Sunshine Centers for Seniors, Sprint, Dorothy's Place, the Youth Elders Project, and the Toronto Senior Pride Network. So when you're working with us, with queer seniors, and you want to refer us somewhere, these are the places here in Toronto that are queer affirming and that are affirming for queer seniors. So these resources are on your resource list, which will be sent out to you from across boundaries. Next slide, please. So it is crucial, I can't stress this enough, that we support each other. So we are not lonely. Queer seniors are not lonely. We are not afraid. We are not isolated. And to help us to get out of those closets, my business is called Out of the Closet because I don't want to see us going back into the closet. So many of us have lost years of our lives hiding, not being able to be our true selves. So please, let's work together to support queer seniors. And as I stressed before, kindness, caring, compassion, patience, and respect that we must practice for ourselves and with each other. Next slide, please. So this is the point where you get to ask me anything you have ever wanted to ask a queer senior, a queer Trini senior. This is your opportunity. Is there anything in the chat? The unique needs that we may have. Well, I thought I had outlined that in my presentation. We need to have people that we can count on who will believe us when we say this is what's happening in our lives. In terms of getting medical care, it helps to have doctors or nurses or PSWs who will support us and who will not judge us for the fact that we are queer in terms of housing, safe housing. Many times you have to hide the fact that you're queer to get decent housing. I was helping a queer senior recently where she was living in a really nice apartment and she was out as a lesbian. She's 70 years old, and the younger people, straight people in the building found out that she was queer and they started harassing her, and management did nothing, even though it was they were breaking the law. I mean, we are covered under those four grounds of the Human Rights Code. So we had to find help. Luckily, she had the money that she was able to move. But think about the fact that you're living in a place that you like, and then suddenly you have these straight people around you who are harassing you, and you have to move for your own safety. So, positive, queer positive medical care, supportive housing. In terms of jobs right now, you have to be careful to decide whether you want to be out or not. Many of us have lost our volunteer opportunities because many seniors are queer who are volunteering their time, and those opportunities have been taken away. I hope that answers your question. Oh, for two spirit elders. So, in terms of two spirit elders, the support that's needed is different. So some of the two spirit elders that I know who are not living on reserve or living in Toronto have had to find their own support, because in terms of accessing general mainstream supports, it's even more difficult. So it's difficult when you're a queer senior. It's more difficult when you're a two-spirit elder, because some of the indigenous organizations are not in tune with two-spirit people. So there's also that form of discrimination that's taking place within indigenous organizations that are not supporting some two-spirit people. I hope that answered the question. Are there any other questions? So if you think of any other questions, if we could go to the next slide just to wrap up, please. So the next slide. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time and for being here. Thank you to Rodney and Tanver and to Across Boundaries. Feel free to get in touch with me. You can access me through my email, my phone number. I can ask Across Boundaries to make this information available to everybody who attended the presentation. And if you think of something after we are done here tonight, feel free to get in touch with me. And thanks again, everybody, for your time. My one last request is please, please, please remember that you have the power to improve and save the lives of us queer seniors. Be kind, be caring, be compassionate. Thank you so much.
So much love and gratitude to you, leZlie. Wow, that was so impactful. That was so amazing. So incredibly impactful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I sort of, yeah, I mean, like, and I think I'm so grateful for the questions and the ways that you were able to talk about from your perspective, but also from perspective of others. So we have a question here from Stephanie. Can you please tell us about being a bionic dyke and Jurassic dyke? Ooh, okay, okay.
Somebody looked me up. So I say I'm a Jurassic dyke because I go so far back. I've been out 45 years. So I'm now a dinosaur, Jurassic dyke. And I am a bionic dyke because I have a new brain and 2 new hips. So my body is full of titanium. And whenever I travel, it's a
Yes.
nightmare for those people who are using the wand. So that's why I'm a bionic and Jurassic dyke.
Oh my gosh, yes, Bionic and Jurassic Dykes, collect.
And I'm a Callaloo dyke too.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, there needs to be a lime. Once we open up, there needs to be a big lime. I want to see a community gathering of all Bionic and Jurassic Dykes together, Callaloo Dykes in the same space.
I'm the only one, Rodney. I'm unique. That way.
Party of one. Party of one. Oh my gosh, so much gratitude to you again. Once again, thank you for all the work that you do, for all of the support that you do, and all of the amazing wisdom that you gave to us in many ways. And so, reminder that you can reach leZlie at leZlieoutofthecloset.com. So that's LEZLIE outofthecloset.com. 45 years. Wow, amazing. Goals in many ways. And do you have any final words, love? Anything you wanna leave our friends with for the spring and summer?
Well, yes, the season is changing. I know there's going to be snow tonight, but yeah, 3 centimeters. I all I want to say is thank you, and just remember that one day, those of you who are younger, if you are lucky, you too will be a queer senior. And what kind of life would you like to live?
Mhm.
And how can we work together? It's so important that we work together. And I always like to end with saying, be kind. Please be kind to yourselves and be kind to each other.
Amazing. And these are such salient words to end by. Thank you once again. That was leZlie Lee Cam. Please look her up, look up her work, bring her into your organization, because I think that this conversation is it's particularly important when we think about moving. How do we move together as a community intergenerationally, and how do we heal together from this particular moment? So I want to send my gratitude and love to you, leZlie. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for being open to leading this, and thank you for all the work that you do. Much love to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rodney. Thanks across boundaries. Mwah.
Mwah. Bye, love.